So we're going to be covering quite some ground this afternoon. It is going to be a recorded session. We'll send out a copy to everybody after the session, and also to the people perhaps that haven't been able to join us today, so that you can explore more and you can reach out to us if you wish to. You will have noticed that for this session, mics and cameras have been muted or turned off. It's to assure the quality of the audio for all participants in the meeting. If you do want to ask a question, please do go ahead. There's a Q&A chat feature at the top of the window, which you can probably see. I think on my screen it's something like the second from the left. And you can use that to submit your questions. Colleagues will be answering questions in the chat as we go along, but we will also have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation too. So now that we've done that bit of housekeeping, let me move on. I don't know how much all of you know about the OU, but Howard Wilson was actually our founder. So kind of back in the 60s, he had this idea, and he was really quite passionate about making higher education open to all, irrespective of an individual's background. He felt really strongly that it shouldn't be the preserve of the privileged few. And we stay true to that principle today, more than 50 years on. So we have an open access policy in terms of, you know, who can come to study with us in terms of our undergraduate study. So more than 50 years on, you know, we have over 200,000 students studying with us now at the Open University. Nearly 3/4 of them are in work, and hence we're really accustomed to providing supported learning which flexes around people's work and also their other commitments, and has informed our approach to the development of apprenticeship programs, which of course are work-based in nature. And we're now one of the largest degree apprenticeship providers in England, with 1 in 12 degree apprentices in the country studying here at the Open University. So what is an apprenticeship? So it, as I say, is a work-based learning programme, and it really supports an apprentice to develop knowledge, skills and behaviours which employers have identified to enable that apprentice to achieve competency. Apprenticeships are highly regulated, as you may know if you've worked with them for some time. There must be new learning available to the apprentice. The job role must align, so apprentices are offered the right opportunities at the right time to put their new learning into practice. And also, time off the job must be provided to enable the apprentice to engage in meaningful new learning. So, how about the Digital and Technology Solutions Professional Standard? So this is really a broad standard. It's highly versatile, and it develops a broad set of skills across all of the core pillars of technology. And I think that last sentence there is really important, because the reason that, you know, it's so important to develop those skills is to enable apprentices to be able to evaluate, initiate, create and support business solutions using digital technology. And as we all know, digital technology is so important to driving competitive advantage, to helping organisations reduce costs, and it's really becoming a strategic function. And this standard really supports the development of your workforce to be able to address those challenges and seize those opportunities that are available to you. If you haven't seen it before and you haven't seen this standard, you haven't worked with it before, I would really encourage you to go and have a look at it on the IFATE website. The links there, we'll be sending out the slides, as I say, after this webinar. If you're new to it, have a look at the duties. So those are the elements that the employer group who developed it are suggesting be present in an apprentice's job role. So it might be a permanent feature of their job role, or with a few of them, it might be that you need to think about, well, how could you begin to give your apprentice exposure to those kind of areas? There's about 15 duties which relate to the core of the programme. This programme has a core which everybody studies, everybody follows, but then there is the opportunity to specialise, and we offer 4 pathways in cybersecurity, data analysis, network engineering, or software engineering. So certainly go and take a look at that standard. It's really, really good. So why might you consider using the DTSP apprenticeship standard? Well, over the last 6 or 7 years since it was created, it's actually become one of the most popular degree apprenticeships. And if we look at the external environment, I guess, it's really easy to see why. We all know that we have a digital skills gap. That's been exacerbated perhaps by the rate of change and the rate of digital adoption since the pandemic. Surveys, as you can see here, predict both huge growth in the number of technical jobs and particularly a growth in demands for higher level skills too. More than half of employers are focusing investment on upskilling and reskilling in this space. And when it comes to the skills that they're looking for, DevOps tops the list, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, with programming, agile project management, cybersecurity, and user experience hot on the heels. All of those skills are covered to some extent by the DTSP programme. And it's not just the hard technical skills that this apprenticeship develops. Through the academic-based work and also through the collaboration with others in the workplace, the programme also bakes in the professional skills that apprentices need to be successful in their role and also in their future career. So we can see there, analytical thinking, creative thinking, absolutely that's encouraged in the academic knowledge-based modules that they'll be studying. They will be encouraged to think about the opposite view. Are there any unintended consequences from what they're proposing? And also, how that then relates into the workplace and projects that they're working on there. The work-based learning and the careers-based aspects will also focus on things like resilience, self-awareness, etc. And I could go on. This is a really traditional view, isn't it, of an IT department. And when it comes to thinking about, well, who is this apprenticeship standard for? I would say we've seen that it's been hugely successful, both for newly recruited, early careers professionals, right through to existing staff who are keen to upskill to progress in their careers. So whilst these roles still exist today, perhaps not so many stacks, physical stacks as we've got in this photo. And whilst they do exist, as technologies converge, very gone are the days where, IT pros stick solely to their specialist area of expertise. And if we think about DevOps, where, some of the studies I've seen show that 1 in 6 jobs now are in that area, that involves teams coming together in a really agile way, infrastructure specialists, software development teams, and it's all about reducing the time it takes to deliver value to the business. Each team member has to have an understanding of what everybody else is doing, and how that fits together within the project as a whole. For a software engineer to understand programmability in a cloud environment, so they need some understanding of networks, infrastructure, and cybersecurity to be able to do that. So the fact that we have this really broad coverage of all of the core pillars of IT within this standard really supports the way, as you will know, that the industry is moving, the way that our own IT departments are evolving. That's really exceedingly good news. And it's not just the breadth of the standard, I think, that makes it useful to organisations as technologies converge. I think also we need to think about the way that the technology function within organisations is changing. So we have long gone beyond it becoming or being operational. Increasingly, it is a strategic transformational function, that is supporting organizations to survive, to grow. And some of those professional skills that we've just looked at are going to be incredibly important, in terms of supporting you to develop team members who can become the leaders of tomorrow and can really help you embed meaningful change within your organizations. And this for me illustrates where the magic happens. So it's really about that intersection between the learning coming from the knowledge modules, the academic modules that the apprentices study, their reflections on conversations with others, and also, the application of their newly developed knowledge in the workplace. All of those things decrease the time it takes for an apprentice to be effective in role, and deliver value to you, and it really supports you to develop new talent. And I'm now going to hand over to Chris. My pleasure to hand over to him as he's going to talk you through the programme, how it has been created, and how we deliver it to maximise the success for you and for your apprentice. Over to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Jane. So on this slide, you can see a representation of the topics that are taught on the apprenticeship. And our real goal with this is to, start at the beginning, start with those broad-based concepts, and then develop that knowledge over the course of 4 years to be to bring that apprentice on to be, if you like, a junior manager or that kind of a level within your organisation. So, and the idea is that that could be a school leaver, as Jane said, or it could be an existing member of staff who's moving into this area. And what we've found is that employers really value helping new apprentices, be they school leavers or people changing the area, to really think about their careers, think about why they're in their current job and how they fit in. And so you'll notice that the first bit of learning we've got there is, first of all, finding out about how to do remote learning well. And we know there's a lot of fear about people not coming onto campus and so on. But I'll talk a bit more about that in the coming slides. But then this situating the learning in the workplace, thinking about how all of the opportunities over the 4 years are going to add up to make the apprenticeship as a whole. And then alongside that, we then cover broadly the main topics in computing today that are important. So we pick up networking, and cybersecurity as being important and valuable skills that everyone really needs today in this digital space. And then programming skills, again, important in most roles, and important in every role, problem solving and understanding our current challenges in computing. So those challenges in computing is quite broad ranging. We look at things like Bitcoin and blockchain, alongside sort of bits about data security and so on. So it covers all kinds of topics in that first year, to bring someone into the workplace effectively. And then in the following year, those get developed further. So we have a large block of time looking at programming using the Java programming language. And I think it's worth noting here that across the apprenticeship, the apprentices will see, in a taught sense, Python, Java, PHP, JavaScript in various different places. And our goal with those languages is not that these are what they're going to be using in work, but we use them as typical teaching language to show different aspects of programming in different contexts. We also teach web technologies at stage 2, and that's where they'll meet things like JavaScript and HTML. And bringing that back into the workplace is that link to looking at projects. And so you'll notice each of our kind of light blue blocks at the bottom there is all about project working. So we're not talking here about pure technical apprentices. We're talking about those people who can manage projects, operate effectively in teams, and move to that kind of junior manager role. Looking to stage 3, we pick up things about service management, more details of project management and how that feeds into finding requirements and managing those. Something about databases. We don't, for most of our apprentices who aren't in the data analyst pathway, it is a fairly light touch introduction, but the goal here with all of these topics where it's core is to give the apprentices the language of computing, the language of a digital professional, so that they can work with their colleagues effectively. So let's say that your apprentice is a networking specialist. Probably they're not going to have to work with databases regularly, but that might be a part of their role that they are involved in managing the network around a database server, for example. And so they might have to work with a database team to talk about the needs of that team. And that's what we're trying to enable more than anything else. We have 2 specialist modules that are taught. I've put them in here as options, but you have to have the same option in each block. So these broadly go across in rows. So for software engineering apprentices, they learn about software engineering and then go in depth into web, mobile and cloud technologies. Those on the cyber pathway do cyber security, information security, networking do Cisco CCNA, and those on the data analyst pathway do algorithms and data management analysis as their specialisms. And then at the end of stage 3, there is a kind of a change of focus from just learning about projects towards moving towards that final assessment that all apprenticeships have, known as the endpoint assessment. And so there is a good chunk of time there for you and your apprentice to engage with that requirement, which will then be throughout the final year, the apprentice doing a project in the workplace in their normal day-to-day job that will give them the experience to get through that final assessment. The final thing I'll call out is the IT systems planning for success here. Really interesting module because it focuses on a lot of the human factors around why IT systems go wrong, why they don't get deployed correctly and so on. And it really pulls together all of that technical learning in earlier years and that broad-based learning to give the apprentices that kind of feeling for, well, how, when I'm let loose, as it were, am I going to make sure my organisation is successful? And that's where we really want to leave our apprentices. Okay, so you saw the stages there. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what the delivery looks like. And this is very high level and this is something you can ask more about later on if it's important and interesting to you. We have 2 starts a year. Our upcoming start is in February, and that takes 56 months for apprentices to finish. And in October, we have a start that takes 48 months. And what this slide is designed to illustrate is that the February start students catch up, or maybe I should put it the other way, the October start students catch up with the February start students by the end. So if you are thinking about taking on apprentices on in February and then think, oh, maybe we want another person or a couple more in October, the good news is that they all finish at the same time. The other thing to point out with this is because the February start is a bit slower, this really benefits certain types of apprentice. So if you've got an apprentice who might have some additional needs, it gives them that kind of slower ramp into study. Equally, if you're taking on a school leaver, it gives you an opportunity to do some in-work training alongside the apprenticeship to make them more valuable to your business, perhaps we might say. It might also work well for those who are established but moving within the organization because again there's less study needed in those first months as a result. So that might help with that transition from being a full-time employee to being an apprentice. The other thing to point out on this slide is that our delivery is a little bit lumpy over the course of the apprenticeship. We don't have a constant amount of study per week. That varies depending on the intensity of the teaching. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but again, something that you could explore later if you want to understand why we do it and how it all fits together. We've also mentioned on there what the total study hours is here. For those of you who've had apprentices for a long time before, you'll be aware of what we used to call 20% study hours, where it was 1 day a week. Of course, what we do now is we have that 1,600 hours over the whole apprenticeship that can then be used appropriately where necessary, and it works out at a bit more than a day a week on the 4-year option. So something about how we teach apprenticeships. We don't just teach modules, we do support the apprentices throughout. We provide a practice tutor, and Natalie will say something about that in a few minutes. But we also provide subject level information to those apprentices. And on the right here, you can see a screenshot from our learning environment where we pull together what they're learning, their modules on the left there, alongside things that are happening that are enrichment activities. So we might have events and opportunities from our partners. So you can kind of see on that screenshot that we're working with Cisco on a cybersecurity event at the moment. There's lots of other free learning resources on there as well. So again, sometimes in the workplace, you want your apprentice to pick up something before the kind of normal module study brings them to it. We have links to OU material, which they can dip into at any time. We have a lot of career development support, and then you'll see we've got a careers fest advertised there. And we're not looking to try and get your apprentice to move away from you. We're looking to help them understand their career path within your organisation and help them develop that kind of wider business knowledge. And there are also social events that happen on here, most of which are online, but there's that opportunity for apprentices to get engaged. We're not a lot of people think distance university, no one does anything socially, but actually there's a lot of things happening. One concern a lot of people have about distance learning is how will everyone know what to do? And on this slide, I wanted to show you a bit about what a typical module looks like. So this is our networking and cybersecurity module, the first 3 weeks of it, and it's where apprentices started in October are at the moment. And you'll see that it's very clear to them what they need to do each week. They click into the study, and when they've done it, they can tick it off. Another feature that you can see on here is we have assessments built into this calendar. So we have something there called an ICMA, which is a computer marked assignment that we use on some modules to allow apprentices to check their learning as they go through the modules, and we can keep track of them on a week by week basis as a result. And another really important thing here, which has been covered up by the slide number, unfortunately, is there is a link there to download key dates. So something apprentices, as you can imagine, forget about is when assessments are due and when tutorials are and so on. So we make it easy for them to download that into their work calendars so you can work with them to help them manage their time if they're finding that tricky. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. And this is self-paced guided learning. So it allows apprentices to work through at their own time. So if they get to a topic that they're familiar with, maybe because it's something that they do every day in their work, in their normal job, they can skim through the introductory material and get to the things that are really helping them grow. So they're not having to sit through a long lecture where most of it is stuff that's boring and they already know. They can jump straight to it. And I think this is a really valuable um, thing about the way the OU teaches. It's all high quality. A lot of it is custom written for the OU. Sometimes we buy it in as well, but we're very selective when we do that, as you might imagine. It's accessible online. It is designed for online study. Um, we do send out books where it makes sense to as well. So some modules get hard copy books, some it's all online. But it's there for apprentices when they need it to dip into. And you might say, well, if everyone's doing a slightly different study to everyone else, how do apprentices keep track and how do we keep track? An important part of that is having self-assessment questions. So these might be quizzes like those computer marked ones, but they are also opportunities for reflections where apprentices can type their own answer into a box and the computer then doesn't mark it, but it gives them either a way to sort of evaluate their own answer or a model answer that they can compare it with. And I think a really important part of the study here is it is all inclusive. So we cover all of the teaching necessary for the apprenticeship within the modules, and that makes the modules quite big. But it does mean that if in your organisation you feel that you might struggle to support an apprentice with learning a particular area, you know it's going to be covered in the OU's materials. Um, but again, equally, if it's something where you've got a good mentor and you're helping that apprentice get ahead, the apprentice has got that opportunity to skim and move through at their own pace.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Mm.
Yeah, I think this is just to say that, typically the apprentice will work with two different platforms, a third platform if they are also doing functional skills, maths and English as part of their apprenticeship. But as Chris has shown, Student Home is really their one-stop shop where they go, not just to access all of that really rich interactive learning, but also those social events and that careers support, etc., etc. Access to the OU's world class online library is also from Student Home. But because this is an apprenticeship, as many of you will know, apprentices need to build a portfolio of evidence demonstrating how they are meeting the knowledge, skills and behaviours required by the apprenticeship standards. So we have an e-portfolio system, it's called My Knowledge Matters, which helps them with that. So it is a repository for that evidence, but it's so much more than that. It acts as a place where they go for their the progress review information, which Natalie's just about to talk about, so I will not steal her thunder, and also the place where they record that all important off the job training hours. So it's really important that they do record that time spent. Natalie, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. So there is a lot of support available for employers and apprentices on this programme. I'm going to start talking about my role, which is on the left-hand side of this slide, the Apprenticeship Programme Delivery Manager, or APDM for short. So the APDM is the primary Open University apprenticeship related contact for employers once applicant names for the programme have been confirmed and onboarding has commenced. So each employer is allocated an APDM who will remain their main contact for apprenticeships during onboarding and while their candidates are on programme. It's probably good to mention that if you are planning to recruit apprentices for the programme that will be new employees into your organisation, the APDM will be happy to work alongside your Open University Relationship Manager to provide guidance on the job description. This should help you to align the job role to the work-based opportunities your apprentice or apprentices will need while in the role to be successful on the programme. As Jane mentioned earlier, the OU operates an open access policy for undergraduate study. So from our perspective, there are no academic prerequisites for this programme. This can be helpful if you're interested in using apprenticeships as a vehicle to diversify your workforce and recruit on the basis of aptitude and passion for technology. So we can absolutely help you to provide input into your creation of a person specification to support you to recruit individuals who are likely to have the attributes needed to be successful as a digital and technology solutions professional apprentice. So my role as the APDM, we're heavily involved in the onboarding process, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about on the next slide. But we also, once candidates are on programme, once they've been accepted, we are the main contact for a nominated individual responsible within the organisation for managing apprenticeships. The APDM send regular management reports detailing progress and highlighting any concerns. They often have regular meetings, either face-to-face or online with employers as well, just to discuss apprentices and make sure everything's going as it should be. So moving round, I'll talk a little bit about the practice tutor. So the practice tutor is the main Open University contact and support for the individual apprentices that are on the programme. So they're allocated just before the programme starts, and ideally they remain the same person throughout the whole 4-year programme. They would start by meeting the individual, the apprentice and the line manager within a few weeks of that programme starting, and to agree the training plan and to start setting targets, which they will review at meetings 4 times every year. So the practice tutor will arrange a tripartite meeting with apprentices and their line managers 4 times a year at a minimum, just to review targets, check everything's going exactly as it should be. They help to integrate the learning they're doing at the Open University into the workplace, and they'll also monitor things like the off-the-job study time. Chris mentioned the 1,600 hours that is required as part of this programme. So the practice tutor, when they're conducting those reviews with the apprentice and the line managers, will just be checking that they're having that time, and that importantly that time's actually been recorded in MKM. Moving around again, we have the academic tutors. So each module will have an academic or module tutor assigned to it. That person will be delivering tutorials, they'll be involved with the forums on the module, they will mark and provide feedback on assignments during the module as well. So the module tutors tend to change throughout. The practice tutor ideally remains the same throughout the whole programme, but the apprentices may find they have different academic tutors depending on which module they're on throughout. We also have a dedicated student support team. We actually have one that's particularly supporting apprentices, the apprentice and enrolment support team. So they're a really useful resource for apprentices who are on programme. So apprentices might wish to contact the support team if they perhaps would like to have study materials provided in alternative formats, or they might want to explore having additional support sessions with a tutor or other tutors. The team can provide support on IT queries and things like that. So there's plenty of support available to individual apprentices from ourselves as the APDMs, the practice tutor, the module tutor, and the support team. What is really critical for achieving on the programme and succeeding on the programme is having a really supportive, knowledgeable line manager. So we say to employers when they're considering taking on apprentices onto this programme is identification of a really supportive line manager who's going to be engaged throughout, who's going to do their research and understand the standard and the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are expected to be developed, that will commit to meeting with the practice tutor and the apprentice 4 times a year at a minimum, to provide feedback on apprentice progress, and also who will be able to provide some feedback and support at the end of the programme when it comes to the point of the gateway before the endpoint assessment, where we as the training provider are going to be asking, you know, have they met everything? Are they occupationally competent? The line manager is really key for those discussions as well. And outside of the line management relationship, it's also really good practice to nominate a separate mentor. So somebody, the apprentice, outside of that line management hierarchical relationship, so to speak, can speak to while they're on programme, whether it's somebody who's already been through the apprenticeship or somebody they feel they can talk to openly and be mentored and guided by outside of the line management relationship. There's also the English and Maths support team. So they would come into play if applicants for the programme don't have the level 2 English and Maths qualifications that we look for. They don't have to have level 2 English and Maths to come to the programme. I will mention a bit more about that on the next slide. But if an apprentice comes on and they do need to do English and Maths as part of the apprenticeship, we will provide them with a dedicated functional skills support tutor who will guide them through those qualifications, which we ask to be done in year 1 of the programme in an ideal world. So that's all the support that's available. Jane, if you can move it to the next slide, please. Thank you, Jane. So just so you're all aware, there is a robust application process for this programme. We do ask for quite a few documents and pieces of information as part of the onboarding for this programme, but applicants do always have access to their APDM during the onboarding period if they have any queries. We usually give 3 weeks to apply. That may be reduced depending on how close to the final enrolment date deadline applications come through. So if applicants are coming through sort of nearer the end of that onboarding period, they may find they have sort of fewer than 3 weeks. It could be a week or 2 weeks to apply. But essentially, we asked for quite a range of documents. One is the skills scan, which is a very key document which asks individuals to review their sort of current learning and where they sit with their knowledge, skills and behaviours already at the point of application. We ask for individuals to work ideally with their line managers on this skills scan so they can say where they feel they sit. The line managers can then say where the opportunities are to be developed through the programme. So that's a very key document that we ask for as part of onboarding. We also ask for English and Maths certificates, the job description or the job role aligned to the role the apprentice is looking to start or they're already in. We ask for an up-to-date CV. We also ask applicants to go through an English and Maths initial assessment process on the BKSB tool, which just gives us a snapshot of their current working level at English and Maths and gives us an idea of whether they may or may not require any support while they're on programme. We also ask for their contract of employment. This is something that we do need to see as part of Education Skills and Funding Agency funding rules. We need to check that the apprentices have got a formal contracts of employment and also that they're going to be remaining in employment for the full duration of the programme. We have had instances in the past where people have been on fixed term contracts and their fixed term end date actually is not long enough for them to succeed on the programme. So we do ask that if people are on fixed term contracts, we make sure that that aligns to the planned end date of the apprenticeship. We also ask for the apprenticeship agreement and the training plan, which is the 2 main contractual documents as part of an apprenticeship. We get those sent out and they need to be signed and returned by the applicant and the line manager. And once we've had all of those through, the APDM will collate and send everything over to the faculty for review, and the APDM will also then arrange an application interview with the candidate and their line manager just to review the application in full, talk about any questions or concerns the APDM may have had or faculty may have had based on the documents that have been submitted. And that's sort of really the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Once that interview's taken place, a final review will be undertaken by the APDM and possibly a faculty colleague as well. And then we would come back to the individuals and the employer and let them know the outcome of that process. So that's in a nutshell, the Open University's application and onboarding process. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. That's great. And I think I'm just going to finally share a story. So, we actually have a wealth of stories from employers and from apprentices, who've embarked on their DTSP journey with us and have been delighted with the outcomes. So RDT are one such organisation, which you can read about on our website. So they're a small software business in Kent. They're using the standard to support them to attract and develop early careers talent. And that's been really successful for them because it's highly attractive for young people who want to come and learn the skills, who want to have the opportunity to earn a degree whilst doing so. But it's also allowing RDT to really develop and grow their own talent and enable them to succeed and grow. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. Hopefully some bandwidth will return, and perhaps go out to the team just to see if there's any questions in the chat. I'm just trying to load that now. Or if anybody has any questions, please do type away now. And you know, we have a few minutes just to be able to answer those for you if that helps. Any questions or comments from anybody? Oh, question from Carla. Carla, is the programme only for UK citizens? So the programme is an English programme. As you will doubtless know, skills is very much a devolved matter here in the UK. So the 4 nations each have different educational setups. So this particular apprenticeship programme is funded in England. So if you're an organisation with a wage bill of more than £3 million, you will pay a percentage of that into a levy pot, which you can use for apprenticeships. If you are a small or medium-sized organisation and you know that criteria isn't something that you hit, then you can apply for funding via the apprenticeship service, and typically at least 95% of those costs would be covered if you're successful, maybe a bit more dependent on the age of apprentices that you might be taking on. I hope that answers your question. So in terms of funding, it is available in England.
Yeah, I thought Jane there's another aspect of that question, of course, is whether it's a UK citizen. So
yes,
the apprentice has to live in England, but they don't necessarily have to be UK citizens, do they? They have to be here a certain number of years.
They have to have the right to live and work in England, and I think 50% of your work needs to be within England. So that, I hope that in totality, and thank you, Chris, that answers that question fully. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, as I say, you know, we will be sharing the recording, we'll be sharing the deck. You can get in touch with us if you have any questions by contacting your business development manager, your relationship manager, if you have one of those and you're working with us already, or you can email us at business@open.ac.uk, and the team here will be really happy to answer any questions you might have and to work with you as you develop your plans, perhaps to introduce this programme within your business. So thanks for your time today. Thanks for bearing with me, and have a super rest of your afternoon and evening. Thanks very much, everybody, and thank you to Chris and Natalie for joining me today too.